Yo, 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 what is up? What is up, YouTube boxing family? It is K right here. I'm back at it with another good video today. I figured I'd do like another little gaming video, boxing talk. But yeah, man, let's get right into it, man. This has been on my mind lately because, a bunch of idiots in the YouTube boxing, social circles like to be stupid. But I'm going to be talking about this topic for boxing. Why the ranking system doesn't matter in boxing. And I'm basically just going to talk about rankings in general in boxing. So yeah, let's get right into it. I got a little bit of, time to spare before I get out of here for work. Um, but yeah, either way, let's talk about it, man. For those of you that don't know how boxing works, without the ranking system, there are four major sanctioning bodies in the sport of boxing, in which they are heavily monopolized through the state to have their own, their own political ranking system to determine who is their quote unquote champion. In which it makes no fucking sense because boxing never really needed that in the first place, but that's why promoters and all these corrupt people and sanctioning bodies, they will do that because they believe that, if we could just make money out of it, then that's basically how we're going to be treating everybody in the sport. But if you want to know how the ranking system was even introduced, when the WBA, I believe in the early 1900s, created their sanction body, primarily it was for, only one fighter to hold the belt. But then after that, that's when like the massive expansion of all the other sanction bodies came, with the NABF and the ABF and IBO, IBC, all these stupid ass sanction bodies that make no goddamn sense whatsoever. But obviously, the sport of boxing is only recognized with, the major sanction body belts. So, you can't really put into consideration with all the other belts, but those major belts will are or currently are the WBC, WBA, IBF, and WBO. And there was one point in time where, there was only one belt for the WBA when it came out in like 1920 something. But basically, that was that was supposed to be like the one face, one name, set up for boxing. But then, all the other sanctioning bodies came along. But then prior to that, I believe back in like the 1800s or 1700s, that's when boxing actually revolutionized. Because people always try to say that, oh well, like the British created boxing, but I disagree with that because Britain really didn't create boxing, they just revolutionized it. They just kind of basically remixed it and then turned it into like a more how should I say, safer driven sport by protecting a fighter's knuckles, by just creating the idea that, hey, boxing is is a lot better to fight with gloves rather than fighting with like your hands. But as far as like the art of boxing goes, that's been around since like I think ancient Egypt times, if I'm not mistaken. I'll probably do like a video on that because I find that pretty interesting that nobody doesn't really talk about it. They just kind of listen to whoever just talks online, and then they just basically run with it. But yeah, boxing's been around just as long as like, the sport of basketball has been, if not a little bit longer. I think it's been around for at least 5,000 years, and then the sport of basketball, it's definitely been around for at least 3,000 to 3,500 years. But yeah, the sport of boxing, is amazing, and there's a lot of great talent that has been rising over the past, generations or thousands of years. But yeah, as far as like the ranking system goes, rankings in boxing were at one point, I want to say like prior to the sanction bodies ever being a thing. I know that boxing was made for the sense of, how should I say, it was made for the sense of sanction bodies to, well, actually no, like when boxing was made as a as a big political driven sport, the idea of having the rankings as a fighter wasn't really a thing until sanctioned bodies came. But like prior to that, when guys like Jack Johnson and all the other Black American fighters were like beating up on all the white fighters, and especially when some some white fighters that were actually really good in boxing, like I'll say guys like Gene Tunney, who else? Jack Dempsey, even though he was a cheater, but I'll throw him in there. Those guys were definitely making their names in the American, landscape for boxing. But I can see why, the ranking system at that time frame was still corrupt prior to the sanction bodies being created. But when boxing by its own degree was starting to become more popular, that's when the sanction bodies really tried to basically take off. And then that's where everything started to be corrupt. And that's why that you see these stupid ass people working in sanction bodies kind of ruining or basically ruining the sport for for the wrong reasons. But basically, I'm gonna just be talking about the overview of rankings in general. When a fighter does get to that level of trying to become a number one, quote unquote contender, or just a number one mandatory challenger to go for a belt in today's world for boxing, it's extremely hard to get up to that level. And for those of you that don't know how rankings work, you also have to pay sanction bodies for your ranking to be kept on the list, which is pretty stupid because that's your hard-earned money that you earn as a fighter, and on top of that, you're not being treated fairly by the sanction bodies that don't work their rankings properly for fighters to be represented, the right way for their sanction body, rankings. Because I've even had like several arguments with some fighters. I'll even bring up Ramon Cardenas. No hard feelings with him, but when me and him first talked with each other. By the way, he's a I think like a bantamweight fighter. Yeah, he was a bantamweight fighter if I'm not mistaken, who was like ranked like I think like number 4 or number 5 by the WBA at one point in time, but I think he moved up to 122 if I'm not mistaken. But basically, he was trying to tell me that the importance of a sanctioning bodies to exist is that fighters are supposed to work their way up, like the right way, and then the sanction bodies will do their part to like make sure that a fighter is fully recognized in their own respective right. But I'm just sitting here like that's not how sanction bodies work, and sanction bodies will never do that because by that logic of its own thought process, guys like Vasil Lomachenko being automatically ranked into the system, coming into the sport of boxing early in his career and late in his career, he somehow gets two back-to-back title shot opportunities. Where, for those of you that don't know about Lomachenko's title shot, fiasco bullshit was was when he lost to Orlando Salido for the WBO featherweight title in his second professional fight. And by the WBO's rules, if you lose a title shot opportunity and you're trying to, rematch for that belt again, you cannot rematch it you cannot rematch for that belt coming off of a loss. So that was basically like the biggest problem with how should I say? That was like the biggest problem with that logic because Lomachenko was able to re-challenge for another title for the WBO. And let that be a guy like Devin Haney or Shakur Stevenson or Gervonta Tank Davis if they lost their if they lost their world title shot opportunity through the IBF or WBC or WBA, um, then they're not gonna get that opportunity. And Lomachenko is a perfect example that rankings in boxing don't matter. It doesn't fucking matter that you are some guy off the street that's trying to work his way or work your way up to become a world champion. But then when you get screwed over by the sanction bodies where they're not, representing you the right way, and you can't do anything about it, then that's really why boxers, end up quitting. Quitting the sport. When they're not being treated the right way. But yeah, that's basically a pure example of why the sport of boxing is very, messed up in that manner, because you're not getting the proper representation as a fighter, especially when you're trying to work it, work your way up the hard way. See, now the easy way is being politically connected with, anybody that works with the sanctioning body, or the people that pull the strings, through the sanctioning body. So, pretty much, the problem with boxing is that you have like a bunch of idiots that really just think that the ranking system is fine, and people, they all get let their shot. But contrary to popular belief, it's very difficult to get ranked, especially through any sanction body. Even if you're trying to get ranked in multiple sanction bodies, you're also having to pay sanction fees for all four of them. So it's always best to try to go for that one belt. That will be like the easiest climb for you to get up to a world title. But once you get up to the world title, you also have to wait like like you'll you also have to play like the waiting game for waiting for your opportunity. But on top of that, you could get screwed over in the process, where you don't get your title shot opportunity at all, and then all the other fighters are basically screwing you over because you don't have your your proper representation as a fighter to get up there. And I guess a great example of that would be Luis King Kong Ortiz. He was supposed to get his title shot prior to, I think, beating an opponent to become the mandatory between the winner of AJ and Klitschko for the WBA, if I'm not mistaken. But basically, Luis King Kong Ortiz was supposed to be a mandatory for AJ or Anthony Joshua, and Luis Ortiz, basically agreed to say that he will fight, AJ and Klitschko, and then he'll be like the mandatory between those two people, because AJ even said it to him, hey, let me handle like my business with Klitschko, and then I'll fight you. I think that was like the fight that he was in, or that was like the Povetkin fight. I think it was either that or Povetkin. But basically, AJ made a promise to Luis Ortiz to say, "Don't worry, I'll fight you." And then Eddie Hearn, he told Luis Ortiz that he was going to give him that fight, and Luis Ortiz, he got paid. He got paid step aside money, right, to to wait for his turn. But then, once those fights got done, I think there was some promotional, you know, a promotional failure that was canceled between Sky Sports and DAZN. So basically, Luis Ortiz was not able to get his shot because there the network that wasn't supporting, I guess, at the matchmaking for the fight itself to be made next. Luis Ortiz was basically screwed of like another title shot opportunity. So now Luis Ortiz, he's kind of going through the same situation through the IBF, but he doesn't know when he's gonna get his title shot opportunity. So he's gonna fight Andy Ruiz, which that's a very dangerous like a fight of its own right. But still, for Luis Ortiz to get screwed over in multiple other world title shot opportunities, minus from the Deontay Wilder fights. That just pretty much shows that rankings don't matter in boxing. It just matters that whoever's at the more popular draw in boxing, they will get their shot automatically, because boxing is ran by the hopeless fighters, and the fighters that are on the coincidental list, they have to work their way up to get up to that level. But I just find it really crazy that people just don't look at that, because there's plenty of great talent out there. And my philosophy is that you don't have to be, how should I say, like, you don't have to be a very very good fighter in boxing to be to be recognized in the sanction body. But if you are one of those good fighters out there that can actually fight and you can easily upset multiple fighters in your division, then that's where sanction bodies need to be taken out of the sport, because the matchmaking is so messed up within sanction bodies where you know I even had that one interview with Rashad Mati, that Albanian fighter, if I'm not mistaken. But basically, Rashad, he basically said that there's certain, instances within sanction bodies where they try to basically prevent certain fights from happening, because like a certain fighter is like a bad style matchup, to the other fighter. And I'm just sitting here like, really? That's insane, because it's like that can that easily shows that sanction bodies, they basically work against you to make sure that you don't upset the hyped up fighter that's that's being ranked up fast, in the division that you're campaigning at. And then on top of that, you're not being represented. That's just really messed up. So I don't know, man. I just think, based off of what we've been seeing, especially with all the big name fighters and all the men's divisions in boxing, they're all being screwed over. And I mean, it's a very failed failed setup in boxing, where fighters are just not getting their fair shine. And I don't like that. I like to see more progression, where the sport can get away from sanction bodies. And we as boxing fans, we just need to have the sport being ran by promotional fight leagues, or just like networks that can give fighters all the big name fights. And I think, it, like, if boxing was set up like a fight league, where you have competitive networks, well, I'm not saying like have like a Dana White style UFC, but you know compared to like my fight document that I made for my own personal fight league, I think what would be good to have something a little bit more alternative, a little bit more alternative to my idea that I propose. I think that networks should start bringing fighters to their roster, and then if other fighters that are coming from different networks that want to fight their fighters, on their network, it can be just like the UFC in a way where fighters, they're their own bosses. But if you want to fight the best, you want to get paid more, you have to go through the best competition through all the other networks if you want to become, like the number one fighter. And I think PBC is a great example of that, because PBC, they're not just obviously limited to their competition. That's where people try to say PBC fighters, they don't fight fighters coming from different sides of the street. But obviously that's not true, because it's like, if PBC fighters were just only fighting PBC fighters in their divisions, that would be pretty boring. And then on top of that, people people would not want to be wasting money to go see PBC fights, where we already know that this fighter is like the goods in their division, and you don't really know how that fighter is going to do well against other fighters in different in different divisions. But the thing is that PBC, they do a great job by giving the fans all the best fights that you could think of. And Al Heyman, he doesn't really have any issue of making fights with other promotional networks on different sides of the street. It's just that the problem with the PBC is just that if the PBC can't make fights with other fighters from different promotional networks, then PBC fighters will just continue to do what they normally do best, which is fight other big name fighters and just get their name up there, because that's what PBC fighters should normally do. But when you have promotional networks that are trying to come in and block certain fights, especially when PBC is actually doing their thing of giving us boxing fans, the fights that we pay them for, then that's where PBC fighters are definitely more marketable in their climb to become a world champion. But if you got rid of sanction bodies and had it just straight up like a NBA fight league type of system, Which I'm not saying like, create like a marketized. Well, I am saying like, fight leagues should be marketized through competitive networks, but like, just hear me out. If sanctioned bodies were not put in that manner of preventing fighters from getting their opportunity to become a champion. And then on top of that, they didn't have to go through all this stupid, sanction and fee bullshit, because it's not like that any other like yeah, it's not like that any other athlete in any other sport pays sanction and fees for for their championship victories or their accolades. It's like they don't do that, but it's like, in the sport of boxing, that's the only sport in the world where fighters have to pay sanction and fees. But for the UFC, they don't have to do that. When they become a champion, yeah, they'll probably get like a little percentage cut, but it's like that's it. Like, I mean, Dana White, I don't really respect them as far as that the business goes. For the UFC, because I kind of look at him as like the Don King, Junior in MMA, but still, it's just really weird because you just have so many like how should I say, you have so many people that are hungry that want to become a champion, but having sanctioned buddies in boxing does not make somebody good, you know, in the sport. So to finalize, rankings in boxing really doesn't matter. Um, the ranking system has always been made to make fighters, basically work, 10 times harder for something that they shouldn't have to work harder for. And that's basically how, everything is, like you can't really, say that, certain fighters are not getting what they're shot, but they're still, being treated fairly. No, they're being treated, unfairly. So I think the biggest problem in the sport of boxing is that nobody's not really speaking up like about it. They're really just thinking that the sport itself is just doing fine, and people try to act like, oh well, fighters can, basically come together and blah blah blah. Like, no, there's plenty of fighters out there that just don't feel confident enough to actually try to speak up. But it's like the only people that are going to speak up will be the fighters that actually do care about their careers, and then the people like myself, where we do care about them, and then we want to help you out. But yeah, primarily at the end of the day, when fighters do come to the table and say, hey, look, we're sick and tired of sanction bodies. We don't want sanction bodies, taking over the sport. We don't want state athletic commissions to tell fighters how they should come in to like a fight, on weight, or what type of drugs that a fighter should take. In which I'm not saying that, oh well, fighters should just be cheating. No, I'm saying that if you took sanction bodies out the picture, fighters would definitely have like a better way of preparing for themselves to get ready for fights. And then on top of that, if you consolidated weight classes more in the sport of boxing, and you made the sport more marketable for the sense of giving the fans what we fans pay for, of best fights being made, then boxing would be on fire every single weekend. You wouldn't be thinking about basketball. You wouldn't be thinking about American football. Like, you wouldn't be thinking about these quote unquote global sports that are that are way better than boxing. No, boxing does better than every other sport in the world. And boxing can be like that if you got rid of all the bad people in the sport. So obviously that's like a really, really big, big, lofty goal to accomplish. But still, the sport of boxing is a great sport, and everything that you see, in the sport of boxing is made for, you know, certain people, in the game to succeed, and then the rest of everybody, they have to basically go through, all the all the tough roads to get up to their level. So I don't like that. That's pretty much why, why the ranking system is bullshit in boxing. But if you have anything to really say about it in the comment section, yeah, let me know. I like to always, debate people, and I think the biggest problem is that you have so many people in the sport of boxing where they're so ignorant and they're so mentally retarded that that's really where the narratives in boxing really continue, and then that's where boxing by like its own right actually ends up doing the things that we don't want, like we don't like seeing. That's where fighters are able to cheat. They're able to get extra rankings being put being put under their names faster. Like Tiafimo Lopez, he got ranked number 2 by the WBO, and for some weird ass reason, that means that he's able to climb through the rankings way faster, which makes no sense. But that's just messed up, man. I don't like watching that, and I hate watching that. So yeah, that's pretty much it, man. Let me know what you guys think, and that's pretty much it. So I'll see you guys later. Thank you guys, and be sure to like, rate, comment, and subscribe. Peace out, and bye.